Welcome to Reading the Grid, the podcast fueling your Formula One passion. Each week, we explore the stories behind books, movies, and shows that highlight the history of this dynamic sport. Buckle up for a fast-paced journey through Formula One. Now let's jump into it. We're breaking down Drive to Survive Season 6, Netflix's deep dive into the 2023 Formula One season. From fierce rivalries and shocking twists to the behind-the-scenes drama that shook the paddock, we'll get into the driver drama at Alpha Tauri, the trials and tribulations, both managerial and performance-related, at Alpine, the desperate fight between Haas and Williams to escape the bottom of the Constructors Championship, and of course, the big question hanging over Lewis Hamilton's future. Whether you're a die-hard F1 fan or just here for the chaos, Season 6 proves once again that Formula One is about so much more than just racing.
The 2023 Formula One season served up new faces. In terms of commentators, we received an introduction from Danica Patrick, which has been justly maligned across the fandom. In terms of drivers, Nick de Vries got a seat in Alpha Tauri next to Yuki Tsunoda, and Pierre Gasly moved to Alpine. And Logan Sargent, the new American driver for Williams, joined the grid. Logan does not get as much focus as we may expect, given that he is the first American driver on the grid since Drive to Survive premiered. But the wild ride that is Nick de Vries's relatively short time in Formula One gets a lot of attention, as we will dive into later. Lewis Hamilton, on the other hand, gets more and more disillusioned by Mercedes. He's starting to feel unappreciated and that his feedback is not valued as much as it used to be. Certain speculations about him possibly leaving Mercedes and joining a rival team spooks Toto enough to try to appease Lewis in extending his contract. We further get into team dynamic. Toto Wolff spells out what makes the winning team in Formula One: right people, right place, right mindset, and right values. No team is perfect, and every team faces some kind of deficiency in one of these areas. Alpine struggles finding the right people due to getting the most acrimonious driver pairing possible and having a team principal who's having trouble managing personalities and many other aspects of the team. Ferrari struggles finding the right mindset as they deal with the new team principal that many Ferrari fans, called Tifosi, feel does not have the experience to lead the team to glory, as well as managing very ambitious drivers and trying to minimize poor strategy calls that plagued them in the previous season. Red Bull struggles with exhibiting the right values as it continues to play Russian roulette with the drivers in the main and junior teams and showing blatant favoritism to others that may or may not be fully based on merit.
Season 6 provides us with a few storylines that will leave you wondering, where is this sport headed next? With that, let's dive into the spoilers. The fortunes of Aston Martin are back in the spotlight after a couple seasons where they were barely featured. There are results that are shown on the track, which are remarkable, that fall off at the end of the season, although they're not covered by Drive to Survive. And Papa Stroll states, with my vision, with my business sense, and with my wallet, I will create one of the best Formula One teams in the world. I do not know about his vision or business sense, but his wallet seems to be doing a lot of the talking.
Indeed. Before the first race at Bahrain, Lance Stroll suffers a mountain bike accident that left him with broken wrists and toes. Nobody thought he would be ready to compete in the first race. So it is a surprise for everyone when he shows up in the paddock. According to Papa Stroll, he found a miracle worker of a doctor in Barcelona, and the surgery that was performed on Lance was a success. Although Papa Stroll claims that Lance is my son first, racing driver second, it seems that Lance's return was rushed, as he confirms that he's taking stuff that he's allowed to take, but won't confirm that it is morphine, and he's in pain every time he has to push the brake pedal. The saddest quote that he gives is that the pain is terrible, but I keep thinking about the old man. I just want to make him happy. This quote is what made me think that Lance may be ready to call it quits. but does not want to disappoint his father, who looks incredibly happy and proud when Lance finishes P6. It makes you wonder if he's happy because Lance finished the race and is no longer in pain, or is he super pleased because the result was so good?
I think it's because of the result. I have broken my wrist. I've had surgery on my wrist. I've done the rehab. It made my stomach turn thinking about the possibility of Lance getting in the car, dealing with those G-forces. I just can't fathom the amount of pain that he's in, no matter what he was on, which then comes to the question, FIA cleared him. What are they or are they not allowed to have in their systems when they're driving?
I think they do have to follow protocols for anti-doping, but I also want to refer you back to Papa Stroll's comment. He has the wallet. And I have to say, even in this case, may have done the talking.
I think it had to have, because it was mind-boggling to me that he was so okay with putting his son in the car and jeopardizing his long-term health and recovery. The driver drama within the Alpha Tauri team was one of the most chaotic storylines, and Netflix leaned into every twist and turn. The season opens bringing the highly rated rookie, Nick de Vries, who Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko, who saw him as a mature, technically savvy driver with a very strong junior career. But from the very first episodes, Drive to Survive highlights how de Vries struggled to adapt to the AlphaTauri, his lack of pace, multiple crashes, and inability to beat Yuki Tsunoda put him under immediate pressure. The behind-the-scenes footage emphasizes how quickly Red Bull's patience wore thin. The tension peaks around the Austrian Grand Prix, which was round 9, when Helmut Marko and Christian Horner openly discussed de Vries' future, and by Silverstone, round 10, he's out. His firing is abrupt, brutal, and a reminder of how cutthroat Red Bull's system can be.
I agree. And I think this quote for Pierre Gasly is very apt. And also, obviously, Gasly knows what he's talking about. Red Bull got no patience, no mercy, good or bad. That's just the way it works here. Enter Daniel Ricciardo. Nothing Netflix loves more than Daniel Ricciardo and a comeback story. And this season, they got both for the price of one. Ricciardo's return to AlphaTauri was framed as a redemption arc. Fresh off his Red Bull reserve role and the successful tire test at Silverstone, Ricciardo slots in as the new veteran leader alongside Tsunoda. And I have to say, one of the funniest moments was having Alex Albon recount to Logan Sargent how Netflix will show that story. And he got it completely right. In fact, I think a lot of people say like he should be Netflix editor because he obviously knows how to frame these storylines. Ricciardo's charisma and marketability made him a dream for the show. Red Bull and AlphaTauri hoped he could provide experience and some much-needed positive PR for the struggling team.
Just as Ricciardo's comeback story was gathering momentum, disaster struck at Zandvoort during FP2. Ricciardo crashed and broke his hand, which took him out of action immediately. That opened the door for New Zealand rookie Liam Lawson, who was catapulted into his first ever F1 race that weekend with basically zero prep. Lawson held his own, even outperforming Yuki Tsunoda at times. So his steady hands and calm demeanor made him a standout storyline during his brief AlphaTauri stint, and Drive to Survive makes it clear the kid's got a future in F1.
After recovering from his injury, Ricciardo returned late in the season, reuniting with Tsunoda for the final stretch of races. Netflix emphasizes the veteran versus rising star dynamic between Ricciardo and Tsunoda, showing the team's internal debate. Should they keep the big-name driver or fully back Tsunoda and perhaps Lawson for the future?
Netflix takes us deep into the dogfight between Williams and Haas, two teams with proud histories now scrapping just to avoid the humiliation and financial pain of finishing dead last in the Constructors Championship. For Williams, it's a season of cautious optimism under new leadership. With James Vowles, fresh from Mercedes, making his debut as team principal, Williams had a clear mission: rebuild the team from the ground up while trying to stay off the bottom. Alex Albon became the team's unlikely hero, dragging every ounce of performance from the car, especially at high-speed tracks where Williams' low drag setup finally paid off. Meanwhile, rookie Logan Sargent struggled to adapt, leaving Williams with one reliable point scorer and a whole lot of pressure.
On the Haas's side, it was chaos as usual. Guenther Steiner, the fan favorite team boss, was back with the team's now all-veteran lineup of Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg, regularly qualified well, only to tumble backwards on the race day thanks to a car that simply devoured its tires. Haas opted not to renew Guenther's contract for 2024, ending an era and leaving the team at a crossroads. And now we have to talk about Ferrari. Ferrari's storyline is everything you expect and dread. Speed, strategy blunders, albeit not as many or as calamitous as last year, moments of brilliance, and plenty of frustration, all wrapped up in the signature Ferrari pressure cooker. The season kicks off with Fred Vasseur stepping in as team principal, Ferrari's latest attempt to steady the ship after years of inconsistency and incompetence under Mattia Binotto. Netflix highlights the delicate balance that Vasseur faced, managing internal politics, rebuilding driver confidence, and overhauling a race strategy team that's become synonymous with blunders. The Tifosi were in full force skepticism mode, begrudging the fact that he's not Italian, does not speak Italian, and one fan even saying that he wishes Mattia Binotto was back, which is insane.
Ferrari was fast, particularly in qualifying, where Charles Leclerc reminded everyone why he's one of the fastest over a single lap. There were podiums, moments where Sainz and Leclerc looked like they could genuinely fight for big points. Sainz surprise win in Singapore, assisted massively by Leclerc's self-sacrifice to ensure this win, where Ferrari ended Red Bull's perfect season run. These flashes of brilliance teased a team with massive potential if they could just get out of their own way.
And then came Las Vegas, the high-profile, high-stakes return to Sin City. During free practice 1, Carlos Sainz ran over a loose drain cover, which destroyed his car's floor and side pod. It was an expensive, dangerous, freak accident. Ferrari was understandably furious. The damage was severe, and Sainz needed a full rebuild, including a new power unit and components. Here's where the drama really kicked in. Under FIA regulation, replacing certain components in excess of allotment for that season, even after something completely out of a team's control, triggers a grid penalty. Despite Ferrari's protest that the incident was caused by track negligence, the FIA enforced the rules as written, slapping Sainz with a 10-place grid drop. It was a classic case of Ferrari being both the victim and the team left holding the bag.
Live in 2023, this was so infuriating because everyone recognized that the FIA was wrong and there should have been consideration of how unique this situation was. It was appalling to me to see Sainz and how hard him and Ferrari had worked for them to actually enforce this.
This would be the time when that special consideration should have been put in place. Ferrari drivers still qualified first and second, even though Sainz, who qualified in second, had to settle for starting in 12th place due to the grid penalty, with Leclerc managing to hold on to second place in the race, overtaking Sergio Perez on the final lap in the most exciting on-track battle that they showed on Netflix. Ferrari's 2023 story is ultimately one of transition. Vasseur started laying the groundwork for long-term change, but the ghosts of Ferrari's past, inconsistent performance, strategy missteps, and internal politics are still very much a factor.
If there's one storyline in this season that feels like a slow burn thriller, it's Lewis Hamilton's future at Mercedes. A saga of loyalty, frustration, and quiet contemplation. The season picks up with Hamilton entering 2023 in the final year of his contract, still looking to recapture his 8th world title, but Mercedes is nowhere near where they need to be. Throughout the season, Netflix gives us a glimpse of Hamilton in reflective moments, candid interviews where he speaks about legacy, loyalty, and whether Mercedes can still give him what he needs to finish his story on his own terms. The team's struggles, combined with the rapid rise of Red Bull's dominance, leave Lewis questioning whether it's time for a bold new chapter.
I just want to say I've never seen Lewis portrayed that unhappy. But if I have to put a word to it, grumpy for most of the time, understandably so. But I was just interested to see that the veneer of, everything is fine is just wearing off and he's just showing how he truly feels.
I would even say dejected and discouraged. Having him come off of 2021 where the safety car rule changed the trajectory of the championship, having a winless 2022, you're starting 2023 again with no wins, not competing. The contract negotiations themselves become a subplot. Toto and Lewis emphasize their close bond, but with an undercurrent of uncertainty. Season 6 ends with Lewis ultimately renewing for 2024, although there's a subtle sense of unease, the kind of storytelling that in hindsight feels like the first chapter of a much bigger twist. So every moment of doubt, every sideways glance at that Ferrari garage felt like and was foreshadowing for one of the most seismic transfers of a driver change in modern F1 history. My favorite foreshadowing moment is when Toto says Lewis would not look good in red overalls. They would not suit him. Spoiler alert, he looks really freaking good in red.
He does. The Alpine F1 team's internal struggles took center stage, highlighting tensions between drivers Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, as well as significant shifts in team dynamics. The season delved into the complex relationship between Ocon and Gasly, both French drivers from the same part of France with a history of rivalry. Their on-track clash at the Australian Grand Prix, where they collided following a race restart, left the team without points and intensified internal pressures. This incident underscored the challenges Alpine faced in managing their driver lineup and maintaining team cohesion. It is interesting how we are given very few nuggets of what went wrong with their relationship when they were so close as children, and may have started 15 years before, when Pierre Gasly passed Ocon on the last corner of a go-kart race, but got disqualified. Pierre says they, quote, gave Esteban many, many chances to make this relationship work, but if someone does not want to be friends, then that's fine with me. Ocon, on the other hand, just says there are a lot of personal reasons. Never before had an F1 team had back-to-back weekends where both cars did not finish or DNF'd. With tensions already building, the team experienced a significant upheaval with the abrupt exit of team principal Otmar Safnauer during the Belgian Grand Prix weekend. Claire Williams said that in her memory, there was never a time when the team principal was dismissed in the middle of a raced weekend. And I have to give Netflix credit for showing that moment on screen. The best part was when motorsport director Bruno Famin, who overtook Otmar for team principal, was seen informing Safnauer of his dismissal, and he is the one who said the phrase "c'est la vie," which I think is a very veiled FU.
It is time for us to play our fifth round of Who Said That Quote. Inna is up 9-8, and it's her turn to try to stump me. Inna, let's see what you have for this round.
Well, this round, I wanted to do something different. I'm going to tell you exactly who said a quote, and then I'll read you quotes, and you have to match which quote was said by that driver.
Okay.
And it is Lance Stroll, of all people.
Oh, this ought to be good.
So quote number 1, during the off season, you can just wake up and not care about what you do that day. Eat some junk food, stay in bed all day, watch Netflix. Quote number 2. The off season is a great time to get away from racing. Sugar for the soul. Well, 3. The benefit of having a break is that I don't have to see the dickheads that I see during the racing season. Quote 4. Winter's over, but I find winter to be too long.
Sugar for the soul.
You're right. I told you you're going to get it. Now let's see if you get this one. This was said also by a driver.
Okay.
I'm not going to say about whom, but I think you can guess from the context. Right. It is getting frustrating. He's so slow. Was it said by Valtteri Bottas, Lando Norris, Yuki Tsunoda, or Pierre Gasly?
Norris?
No, it was your boy, Valtteri Bottas.
What?
And he was talking about Nick DeVries. I think that is clear who we were talking about. So I thought you were actually going to go for Yuki or Pierre. But no, that was Valtteri Bottas being stuck behind DeVries and being like, he's so slow.
Oh, I do remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so it's 10-9 in my favor.
Yep.
All right. This is said by a team principal or CEO. We need a post-mortem here because it is incomprehensible. Is it
Toto.
said by... It was. Wow, didn't even shit. Okay.
Because that's actually one of my favorite lines of Toto. 10-10.
So do you want a tiebreaker? The quote is, there could be a movie about it. Was it said by Esteban Ocon, Daniel Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly, or Alex Albon?
There could be a movie about it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there could be a movie about Pierre and Esteban's drama for sure.
Or also Daniel Ricciardo's up and down and comeback.
Esty Bestie.
You're right about what it is about, but it was said by Pierre Gasly.
I was like, it's got to be between one of the two.
Yeah, because that's the thing. When they refuse to specify the reasons for why, they won't go into what happened, Pierre Gasly says there could be a movie about it.
Got it. I could not. I knew it had to be one of the two, but okay. So you're up 11-10. Why don't you tell us what your wild card topics or superlatives are for this season?
Well, I'm going to start with the cattiest or most hypocritical comment. And it goes to, unfortunately, your favorite, Toto Wolff. It's his reaction to when Christian Horner and Adrian Newey were beaming when Max won Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona. Toto said, look, fanboys, first row. I mean, I cannot convey the snark as well as when you watch it, but it was there. The next one is most relatable moment. And again, we have a very unusual person who delivers that, and that is the one, Max Verstappen. So this was during Las Vegas Grand Prix, and the organizers were telling the grid that there was going to be 28 minutes of opening ceremony, and at the end, the drivers would be revealed, and they should act like rock stars. And Max asked, can we hide? And I actually so relate to that comment, and it was very interesting that it was him, of all people.
He's an introvert.
He is. I mean, he's a Libra. I get it. The next one would be the best bromance, and that goes to Toto Wolff and Fred Vasseur. My favorite exchange between them was in Bahrain. It was all in French. And when Toto sees Fred in red for the first time, and he says, oh, you look like you slimmed down. And Fred shows that it's actually the side stripes that make him look slimmer. And then Toto tells him to watch how much pasta he eats. Like, the whole exchange is just adorable and just shows their bromance so well.
And when Toto defends him to the reporter at Vegas, and he said, listen, I've known him for 20 years. You're traipsing into territory you don't want to go into. And the reporter kept pushing Fred to speak. I thought it was a cheeky but very sweet way for him to defend his friend and try to get the press to back off.
But also a cheeky moment when there was, at the very end, the producers ask Fred, like, we're trying to make you look more handsome. And Fred says, too late. And then they ask, who do you think the most vain principal is? And then they show Toto.
And then they show Toto. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cute.
That was cute. Okay, the next superlative is best teammate. And that goes to, of course, my favorite driver, Charles Leclerc, who sacrificed his placement in single Grand Prix so that Carlos Sainz could win. I'm sure there are going to be people who are coming back and will say that Carlos Sainz helped him multiple times. I call that debatable, but also I don't think his help sacrificed his race. This is really the time when even Leclerc, as soon as he is told the strategy of how he has to keep 3 seconds behind Sainz, and the first thing he asks is, well, that's it. Like, that's the end of my race. And he still goes through with it. And I think that just shows how wonderful a teammate he is.
My first superlative is actually redemption win. And it truly is a toss-up between Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. Fernando moved to Aston Martin with the sole purpose of trying to win his 3rd drivers' championship. He started out so strong. Aston Martin looked incredible. He had a great start to the season. Happy to see him back up on the podium. However, for Hamilton to go winless in 22 and most of 23, I'm going to give it to my favorite driver for the 2-3 finish for Hamilton and Russell in Barcelona. It was great to actually see the momentum for Mercedes start to shift a little bit there. And then my second superlative is going to be the most cutthroat decision of the season, and that is firing a team principal midway through the race weekend. We have talked about Otmar and how Alpine decided to let him go. I just thought that was classless on their part and really just too brutal and unnecessary.
Agreed. So now it's time for my lost to time segment, which is the moments which I forgot upon my first watch, but resonate more a rewatch. And the first is Lewis Hamilton calling Netflix MFers. Never thought I'd hear Lewis Hamilton use that word. Did not think Netflix actually deserved that. There are so many other people who that could have applied in his career. So that was very punchy from Lewis. One mystery that I think I didn't realize we had was Zach Brown revealing during Abu Dhabi Grand Prix that Lance Stroll sent him a message that was not PG, but did not reveal what it was. So I thought that was interesting and food for thought. There was another scene with Papa Stroll that I found very perplexing, and that when he offered James Vowles any help that he could give to Williams after Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So that made me think, does Papa Stroll have a stake in Williams?
I had always assumed that when he bought Racing Point, that he didn't have a stake in Williams anymore. But honestly, I don't know. I don't know if he would, if that's a conflict of interest. We should look into that and see.
Yeah, that was very perplexing. The other mystery, and that one requires, I think, some discussion, is that post Miami Grand Prix, Lando Norris and George Russell were taking McLaren's private jet. And George was explaining that in his Williams contract, he had a clause that prohibited him from drinking during race weekend. And then George makes a comment that we need to unpack. I'm not going to say names, but there are definitely people who drink. Now, just to clarify, he obviously meant during the race weekend. Now, Lando makes a dramatic gesture that it's definitely not him. And George concurs, it is not Lando. Erin, who do you think George was referencing?
I don't know. Who do you think?
Well, the thing is, I could eliminate a few people. So remember, it's during the race weekends, meaning like I don't think he's saying anyone was drunk while driving the car. It's obviously between sessions.
Well, but you would still have the after effects, or like you're not as sharp. So I would assume maybe someone at the back of the grid who doesn't really think they have much of a chance. I don't see Max. No. I don't see Charles. I don't see Carlos. I don't see Hamilton. He doesn't drink anyway.
I was just going to say, Hamilton famously doesn't drink. Well, the only name that comes to mind, because it has to be someone who really doesn't give a flying whatever.
Fernando?
Yes, because we know George and Fernando hang out. So he's the only one I could think it applies. But I also think he's the only one who would really take an offense to that comment and would realize that he was talking about him. On the other hand, we know George is not Max's biggest fan. And we know Max loves his gin and tonics after he wins a race. So I don't know if that was a dig. And again, I'm not saying it is him. I'm just saying that's who George may have meant.
Well, it could be, since we all know Max likes to hold a grudge, could have been what led to some of the 2024 drama between the two of them.
All right, well, stay tuned. We'll keep a watch out for any further news on this front. Another thing that I forgot, but I thought was adorable and finally shows Toto in a very good light, is his conversation with his adorable son, Jack, who suddenly pronounces that he wants to be a Formula One driver. And Toto keeps saying it's the third option. So the options for Jack are to save animals, to become a Scottish rugby player. By the way, Susie Wolff, Toto's wife and Jack's mother, is Scottish, so that makes sense. And only the third option is Formula One driver. So I thought that was a very adorable exchange and made Toto look very likable.
Well, Jack's answer was the best. Maybe I'll just do all three.
Another thing that I thought was kind of telling is Claire Williams when she's discussing Alpine and their drama, and her saying poor performance cannot be all bad luck. And I think for most part, she is correct.
Let's dive into my reframed live versus drive. This highlights my memories from watching the season live compared to how Drive to Survive presents the narrative, uncovering the differences in perspective, drama, and storytelling. This season, between brutal team firings, rising environmental pressure, Red Bull's ruthless driver culture, and the FIA's self-inflicted credibility crisis, 2023 was so much more than what Netflix showed us. Max Verstappen's dominance was nothing short of historic. He set a new record for consecutive race wins with an incredible 10. His relentless consistency and blistering pace saw him not only claim his third consecutive World Drivers' Championship, but also help Red Bull secure their first ever 1-2 finish in the standings. This was a true testament to his control over the season since he won 19 out of the 22 races. Aston Martin started 2023 as the surprise package, with Fernando Alonso grabbing podium after podium in their first few races. By midseason, their performance dipped. A lot of the other teams caught up. This was largely skipped despite Alonso's popularity. Drive to Survive did give Aston a little bit of love, but the true story of their rapid development and struggles with updates barely made the cut. McLaren started the season as one of the slowest teams on the grid, but after a major midseason grade, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri became podium contenders. This incredible development arc, a true comeback story, was completely underplayed by Netflix.
Piastri's impressive rookie season, including a sprint win in Qatar, was largely overlooked. Considering how much focus Drive to Survive gave to Piastri's Alpine contract saga in Season 5, the lack of follow-up on his actual racing success was surprising.
Agreed. And Sergio Perez's wildly inconsistent season, he went from winning early races to massive qualifying struggles, and rumors of a potential demotion were glossed over in 2023. However, his fight to secure P2 in the championship was barely mentioned. And then we come to our all-time favorite, the FIA, and their constant rule controversies. Beyond the Vegas rain cover, there were numerous stewarding inconsistencies and controversial penalties throughout the year that stirred up drama. Yet Netflix mostly steered clear of the ongoing debate over the inconsistent enforcement of track limits, safety car rulings, and technical directives. The sports battle with its own rulebook really would have made for great TV. There were a number of other events, such as an environmental protest at Silverstone. Thank goodness there was a crash in turn 1 that prevented the protesters who sat on the track from actually getting injured or killed. Driver market rumors and the Mercedes technical overhaul was a huge storyline that didn't get the spotlight that it deserved.
This season of Drive to Survive had a more muted tone. Netflix did not show many exciting on-track battles. In fact, except for Las Vegas Grand Prix, which is featured in the last episode, I cannot think of any on-track action that was truly memorable. There were no impressive overtakes, fun or controversial radio calls, or outrageous strategy mistakes. Netflix continued to show the same races over and over again, and the chronology really suffered. A lot of F1 fans claims that 2023 was one of the most boring Formula One seasons due to the fact that there was no title fight and there was one car that dominated both the drivers and constructors championships for the entire year. As Christian Horner says, we will never see such winning again in my lifetime, in all of our lifetimes. I hope not. There were battles up and down the grid that were compelling, but I do not think Netflix showcased them fully in this season of Drive to Survive. We did not get as many behind-the-scenes nuggets that we have gotten before, because it does not seem that the new personalities were showcased as much, and none of them brought anything new or exciting to the grid, at least as Netflix presented them. The humor was not as prevalent this season as it was in the past. It is possible because Daniel Ricciardo was not present as much. He was in a different headspace, trying to get back to the grid, so he couldn't provide the cocky, self-assured, and self-deprecating asides that enhanced his previous commentary. Also, Guenther Steiner could see the writing on the wall for his time at Haas, so he did not seem in the mood to joke around as much. I am not going to sugarcoat this. This was my least favorite of all the seasons that we covered so far. After watching this season, this is when I decided to watch Formula Races live. This is the first season I did not binge watch, but watch in stops and starts. It did not hold my attention as much.
Watching 2023 live was not that exciting either. I was actually willing to miss watching races live just because the expectation was that Max was going to win. If we talk about the upcoming season, early season rumors / what's currently going on, we had Bahrain and preseason testing last week. We saw 3 very unique things happen. There was a power outage, there was glass on the track, and then a random bus.
I think it's great that none of these issues that you mentioned that caused the red flag or the delays had anything to do with car's performance, which I think is very promising. Although I have to say, I haven't watched testing live. I don't think I've ever paid attention to it. The general sense that I got from testing is basically that it's almost impossible to judge by the times that was set or how much somebody struggled because everyone runs a different program and they all have different tires and it's all about testing. But I think the consensus is that McLaren look extremely strong. Ferrari may have some work to do. And Red Bull do not look that great, but you never know with Red Bull. They have this amazing ability to turn things around.
And then the latest piece of news is Susie Wolff. She runs the F1 Academy and is spouse of Toto Wolff. Will be challenging MBS in December when his term is up for FIA president.
It would be interesting because, of course, Susie has a lot of conflicts of interest. She is the head of F1 Academy, which is the women's drivers trying to get into any formulas, and also is the wife of Toto Wolff, who obviously with his ties to Mercedes creates this conflict of interest. However, I feel like anything would be better than MBS at this point. And if anyone is there that I trust to kind of keep it in perspective, it would be Susie, because I actually feel Christian Corner even respects her, which is a huge benefit.
I honestly think she could do a good job, although it makes you wonder, is Toto going to retire?
Another conflict of interest is that she and Lewis Hamilton have a relationship that goes way back. They actually competed together when Susie wasn't racing. So even if we'll discount Toto and he completely removes himself from Mercedes, as long as Lewis is on the grid, there's that conflict of interest. But I feel like, Stefano Domenicali, granted he's the head of F1, he used to run Ferrari. I don't think he favors Ferrari at all.
I don't think so either. I would think that there's a way to do it, but I can see why the optics would not be ideal. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update.
Would also love to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts on today's episode, your suggestions for F1 books, shows, or movies to explore, or shout out to your favorite F1 driver pairing. Connect with us on Instagram, YouTube, or X, or drop us an email at readingthegrid@gmail.com. We want your ideas to fuel this podcast, so don't be shy.
Thanks for joining us on Reading the Grid. Keep your engines running and your pages turning. Until next time.